Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. It is the 6th of April in 2026, and we have a very special guest with us here tonight.
Mhm.
This is a guest we have last talked to, believe it or not, in November 6th of 2023. And oh, how time flies. And he
Mhm.
looks like he hasn't aged a day if you look at him right there. But we're very fortunate to have Greg Wooldridge, who is the former commander of the Navy's Blue Angels, and also a former candidate for governor in 2018. And we'd actually known each other for a while before you ran for governor, and then when you ran for governor, I thought you were a fantastic candidate. And look, we're right in the middle of like another governor primary again.
Yeah,
So um, deja vu, huh?
it's pretty amazing. I'm loving it. I mean, we've got some incredible people running in this election for the Republicans. I mean, I just look at some of them. I'd be happy with any of the top four running as far as the quality they bring to the race and the quality they would bring to government in Oregon and the quality they would infuse into what happens in this magnificent state that deserves more than it gets.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, you guys are competing to run against Kate Brown, and I people I know constantly make the mistake of saying Kate Brown when they mean Tina Kotek because, frankly, in some respects, it feels like a lot of the things people were unhappy with during the years of Kate Brown just continued under Tina Kotek.
Yeah,
But frankly, maybe in some respects, she's Tina Kotek has taken some steps even Kate Brown didn't dare do.
right,
You
right.
know,
Yeah, I think she's even more radical than Kate Brown, and that's stretching way out there. I mean, it's not even stretching; it exists out there. That's where she is, and that's not where I think the majority of Oregonians want to be.
it's kind of been an arrogance, hasn't it? Because it's one thing when you don't like what somebody's doing, but when they act like it really doesn't matter if you don't like it. And we've had hundreds of thousands of people, for instance, sign a
Yeah,
petition referring the gas tax and these other
yeah,
transportation taxes at the ballot, and it's like they actually go an extra step to say, you know what, we're going to just make it really tough for you to get on the ballot. We're going to move it from November to May. We're going to mess with you 5, 6 different ways along the way, and who cares what you think?
yeah. And they try to put a dress on a pig. I mean, a lot of this stuff is is just really ugly when you get down to it. I look at some of the new taxes they're proposing in Multnomah and County and the city of Portland. My goodness, people just roll over all the. You have to use the flowery language, the right language, and people roll over to it.
It is strange, isn't it, that so many people so what's your impression now of voters? um are they tuned in enough to what's happening?
No, no. I wish there were a test. You know, a government test, civics test from back in the days. When you had to learn about what government was all about, and it brought things into reality. Right now, it's fairyland. It's Disneyland everywhere. You don't know you, people accept what's not real. I read a great essay by one of my guys that I read about, Andre von Heerden, about the way news and the truth is manipulated, and it gets manipulated. Pretty soon, it's called. Let's see, augmentum ad nauseum, something like that, to where it
Momentum ad
becomes,
nauseum.
yeah, augmentum ad nauseum, and it becomes the truth to people. And part of the problem why it sticks so hard as a truth is because of the pushback people get from what is the truth, and they don't want to believe that. They want to believe what they've been told and led to believe, and by people like Carville and some of these others too. I mean, come on. Uh, you would think with the lack of skill in the opposition, we would fare better. But I think a lot of it has to do with um, the way the media is made, is a majority rule. However, I think the internet has brought a brand new perspective over the last 20 years, and that can be, depending on who is carrying the information, that can be a big weapon as well.
Yeah, you really have to pay attention to who the source is or the conveyor of the information, because they move it through a filter, and I can tell immediately when I talk to someone, and you kind of assume at first that you're going to have a common context for your conversation, and then it's like they have no idea what you're talking about. And you're like, well, that was in the news. And I'm like, no, but I did hear about this other stuff about Epstein, and I'm just like, well, I mean, that's one of the news, but like there's some other stuff in the news. Did you hear about that? No, they
Certainly.
actually don't hear it.
I tell my friends that disagree with me, I tell them, you accuse me of being glued to Fox News. Well, no, Fox News does help bring out some things that aren't ever talked about in other media. But if you can hone it down to something like Wall Street Journal, you can get to some pretty good information and balanced information. Sometimes I disagree with the Wall Street Journal,
Yeah, me too.
but they bring out evidence and the truth, and I kind of like that. So
I also find that because I can recognize the filters and the bias when it's starting to come through, like just the way they put a headline or the way they say something and
right.
structure the article. I can tell what they're trying to get me to think
Mm-hmm.
about a story. The term clickbait applies to a lot of stuff now,
Yeah.
and when I detect that, I measure the news source by how much it makes me go through that before I can get to the actual information.
Yeah.
And if they're giving me too much of this stuff, then I'm just like, that is not a news outlet. It's a
Yeah.
campaign outlet.
Campaign outlet and an outlet that exists and thrives on having commercials and advertisements. That's the only way they stay alive. And if they can, and they, as has been the case ever since TV was invented, get the demographics, right?
Yeah.
What demographic are you aiming at? Are they the ones who are going to spend money? Are they the retired folks? So all that I think helps formulate how a news organization is going to go forth, like maybe even like New York Times and Washington Post. Some of those that are controversial, in my opinion, if not, as you said earlier, a campaign tool.
Outlet. Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting times, and then you can go back and say, well, the kids need to take away stuff from school that can help them with that. And then you got another issue, right? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
I think what is missing, it's become efficient for schools and for the media not to inform, but to really just tell people what they need to think, save them all the trouble of thinking.
Yeah.
And therefore, when they don't engage any facts or logic process, they just become a direct reflection of the information that's fed to them.
Correct.
It's like food, right? You are what you eat. You think what you hear. And it I do there are people that experience those moments and they're like, this just doesn't make sense. I've been told this for the longest time and it's not true. And I've encountered people that have done things like change parties just because of that. But I think what you mentioned, this ability to create fatigue in people and almost break them down is real, isn't it? Because then at some point they're like, okay,
I give up.
Trump's a bad guy all the time,
Yeah.
and they just give into it because they don't want to push back or think.
They're Yeah, and specifically in Trump's case, they're reluctant or they refuse to look beyond his demeanor.
Yeah.
Can be off-putting, of course, and that's because of, I think, the environment he's lived in the business world. And coming from New York City, I mean, I know a lot of people from New York City. They're straight out. They'll tell you, but they'll also give you, the shirt off their back if they need to help you. Which is, it's
Oh,
just that's a dichotomy. That you just wonder how people are like that. But so get beyond the Donald Trump of Donald Trump and look at what is being done and what he values for each and every American. And you'll find that there's no hidden agendas, obviously. I don't think he hides much, but there's also an agenda there that is out to serve us as a country. I mean, if you want to go, the last 6 weeks, we have been promised by the regime in Iran that we will be removed from the earth, the United States and Israel,
yeah.
and other Western civilizations, not only as a form of government, but also based on our beliefs, our religious beliefs, right? So now, and presidents over the last 40 years have heard that, looked at it, and paid very little regard. Let the Strait of Hormuz be run by and controlled by that kind of thinking, but now I think I know we're changing that, and I think it's good for us, for our children, for our children's children, that fear won't rain down upon us, and we can take that energy that we had spent kind of on the side, looking at that all the time, being aware of that, being ready to crawl under our desk in school, and now do things that are more productive and more real, and maybe even have a chance to soften our view on the world when we know there's still enemies out there. When we know, though, that a rogue terrorist group like the government of Iran will no longer be able to carry out what they wish to do.
Yeah, they promised to do all of this stuff, and it started 47 years ago, right? I mean, it's the first thing they said. Every chance they got, they did things like this along the way. We've got hundreds of soldiers that served in Iraq and Afghanistan who can attribute their injuries and deaths to what the Iranian regime, specifically the IRGC, the sort of governing military entity at this point, did to perfect and enhance the roadside bomb. And then, of course, there's a whole laundry list of things. They were behind Hamas. They were the organizers and the brain trust that designed the October 7th attacks by Hamas.
Yeah.
They funded and stood up Hezbollah as a malignant entity in southern Lebanon, which has been nothing but a detriment to the rest of the Lebanese people. And then, of course, Syria, right? And Syria has finally kind of left the stage, and we've seen both Russian and Iranian influence diminish. They were a negative influence in Iraq coming out of that war. But then the Houthis shooting at ships in the Red Sea. I mean, it was all traced back to this one regime who refused to give up on their nuclear weapons program, never negotiated in good faith, announced that they had 470 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. And I'm like, yeah, that's 2 weeks of enrichment work, and you've got enough for dozens of bombs. Who does that? And then we do nothing about it. I know that a lot of people stood by, and I know this analogy is used often, but Hitler ranted and raved, and everybody said, he's just a nutcase. Just ignore him. That was a very costly mistake to ignore somebody. Like, you should take somebody seriously, because all they need is the means to do what they say they are explicitly willing to do. Right?
Yeah. Well said, Kevin. I like what you just said there. That some people say, "Oh, they would have never done anything." Well, they were promising us they would do it, and they had carried out tidbits of that, as you said, throughout the last 47 years. I go back to the Marine barracks where we lost, what,
1983.
300 Marines. I mean, and just the threats, the constant threats, and the lack of freedom. The people in Iran, they've been able to pull down from the internet, thank goodness, the Western lifestyles, which the majority of them embrace.
Yep.
Women driving cars. Come on, Well, maybe let's see. Maybe we. No, I'll get whacked for that, but that old joke. But on a lot of the things we boast about in this country, with the diversity. I mean, they don't accept any of the things that we accept. They're just far away. One of the things I think, Kevin, is that in our culture, in Western culture, we have a certain set of values. A lot of them are biblical, but even the Ten Commandments. I mean, you take stuff and you go, okay, this is the way our country was crafted, why it became a country, to escape some of the things that weren't high value for human beings, and opportunity and equality. And we built on that. What a lot of Americans don't understand is the culture in Iran and some of the other Mideastern countries is just not, it's hard to understand that there are people that are opposite thinkers than us. And when it comes to the value of life and the value of liberty and democracy and all those wonderful things that help make us so great.
Yeah, and I think Islam is starting to encounter this ever so slowly. The Arabs are not happy with the Iranians,
No.
and that plays into this actually, which leads us to where some of this could end up in a better world.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking the mullahs, the Iranian regime, put themselves into this category and demanded that the rest of the world acknowledge this, and now they're just sort of reaping what they've sown. The only difference between now and the last, say, 25 to 30 years is that someone said, enough. We're done with these guys.
Yeah.
And we have the time and the window of opportunity to do something about it. That window of opportunity could go away if they develop a large number of nuclear weapons. And I would just say two words: North Korea.
Yeah.
All this stuff that we're talking about, right? You can't so easily do it with North Korea at this point.
Once it's established,
yep.
How do you deal with it? I mean, do they now have the weapons delivery system, which apparently they have some pretty good drones and cruise missiles and things like that that could deliver that horrible weapon?
Well, they had the missiles they sent to Diego Garcia, which I know you're familiar with that operation is there, and it's 2,500 miles, which happens to be about the same distance of reaching Western European capitals.
Correct. Paris and places like that. Well, to go back a step to the Arabs, the Abrahamic Accords, look how that had started to change the Mideast. And I think that is such a positive direction on unifying, despite your beliefs, your religious beliefs, unifying the people and bringing more freedom to the people in the Mideast. I was surprised the other day when I heard going back to this current 6 weeks, I heard that there have been more cruise missiles and drones attacked and shot at the United Arab Emirates than there were at Israel.
Yeah.
So Iran is just off the rails. I mean, I'm waiting for Saudi Arabia to start weighing in with some. I mean, they've bought a lot of weapons from us over the years, good, bad, or ugly. But come on, folks, you're getting, your plants are getting attacked.
They should take over security of the Gulf. Now that we've done the heavy lifting of really diminishing what the Iranian military threat is, and all we have to do is make sure that the wrap up here of this involves no return of Iranian military capabilities
Yeah.
whatsoever, and then we hand this over to the Gulf Arabs and say, "You got all these great weapons. We'll just back you up,"
Yeah.
and then you end up with something that maybe looks like an Arab NATO, where they just, for want of a better analogy, um, take it from there. Now they have to get along with each other, but then the United States is actually a good interlocutor between them, right? I mean, there's a way this could work.
We become economic partners too. It's
Yeah.
huge. And you talk about an Arab NATO. Well, that people will say, "Oh boy, we don't want them to unite and be strong like that." But as long as there's these economic truths that exist between the major powers or even the major organizations, that we can make it work. But there's nothing about Iran that's going to work.
Right? No, but actually, Iran can work when the people in Iran replace that regime, and a bunch of them tried to do that a couple of months ago, and it's so interesting how underreported that really ended up being here in the United States, and how easily and quickly forgotten it was. Who would argue that there was something tolerable or benevolent about a regime that literally exterminated at least 35,000 of their own people who were protesting against them? And we get all these, no kings protesters wandering around in the streets here. And I'm like, if Donald Trump's a king, why do you have your head on your shoulders? Really? You don't know you want to know what real oppression is like.
Yeah.
That's what happened to the citizens in Iran who stood up to these guys.
Yeah. And I heard, did you hear the story, the reporting that we sent weapons to them through the Kurds?
To the Kurds.
And the Kurds didn't help us there. So they kept them all for themselves, I guess. And that certainly would have helped in the January timeframe.
Well, I know that there's a short, a medium term, and a long term game to this, and let's see how it works out here, right? I know that the immediate thing that's hitting is the economic impact of the Straits of Hormuz. Ironic that the United States is least affected by this, because we have such oil and gas resources that the previous administration was actually busy trying to diminish and shut down. But we have the ability not only to supply ourselves, but much of the rest of the world that is being affected by this. And this didn't exist. This would have been tough to do in the 70s or the 80s, right? Because then we didn't have this capacity.
OPEC kind of ruled the world then, energy-wise. OPEC did, but now we are the number one oil and gas producing country in the world, which is astounding, wonderfully astounding, right?
It is, and it means that allies, that they don't have to depend on a hostile power like Iran to supply them. This is the right moment. I think that sometimes these things, like any military conflict, they don't all go according to plan, and sometimes I think all the Iranian regime's trying to do is just survive, so they can somehow claim that they have prevailed in some way when the conflict winds down. But look, we're actually not getting to one of the things that you can talk about that no one else I know personally can talk about, which is what's going on the military side of this. We just had this F-15E Strike Eagle that got hit, and the pilots ejected, and then there was a rescue of each of them. And this is stuff that I know these guys trained, but it's unusual to have a conflict of this scale. I believe the air power that's been brought to bear is equivalent of what was used in the beginning of the Iraq War. And so it's significant, and yet we're not experiencing this is we've only had a couple of planes that have actually been shot down by enemy fire.
Well, I think the Iranians are paper tigers. I mean, their military, other than the enormous number of cruise missiles, surface to surface missiles, and
Drive.
drones and
And,
things like that, they developed some industrial capacity for that waters your eyes, right? In fact, exported them to Russia, I believe, right? Now
yep.
Russians are giving them info. I read in this magnificent Easter weekend metaphorical rescue, uh,
Yeah.
that the Russians were actually providing the Iranians some positioning and some intel about where to hit the Israelis and other countries, targeting information that they could plug into their land-based weapons there in Iran. You think, well, we've been bombing the heck out of them and tearing them up pretty darn good, but it's a country of 93 million people
Yeah.
who has existed for their military more than, well, for their religion, but that is married up, hand in hand with the military. So, and how the military works and what the goals are, the IRGC and all these others that just have bad intent. So we have not been able to get every single weapon. There's going to be shoulder launch weapons that fire at our planes, and we, I would not say that we have gotten complacent, but when you have not only air superiority but maybe air supremacy, you can start to just be so target focused that you forget about threats.
Yep.
I'm not sure that's what happened in some of these cases. The warthog that got shot down was trying to do a rescue mission, and so they kind of knew there was going to be surface to air threats there. There's no more air to air threats that I know of. I think we've taken out all their airplanes, but
Yeah.
all those missiles that can be hidden, in a little hole in the ground or in a cave or in somebody's backyard that can do a lot of damage to us are still there, and the millions of people in their military that are still intent on stopping this attack. We have to turn them, as we have turned the civilian populace pretty much, I think, toward Western thought and Western quest for our way of life. We have to get the military turned around. I think it's the president's got a real challenge with this next couple of days because I was reading about the electrical grid. It's not as centralized as what we're used to. There are about 15 major sites, but there are 150 others throughout the country that can provide information, and power, electrical power,
Some level of power. Yeah.
to their widespread military efforts and where they hang out. So it's not as easy as I thought it was at first. I thought at first it was just way too easy. And
Yeah.
okay, we're going to roll in and we'll be out of there in 3 weeks. Well, here we are at week 6, right? I think, just again, thank you for letting me blabber, but I think the Strait of Hormuz is probably one of the big issues right now. How do we get that released or taken away from the Iranian authorities? Which again is kind of puzzling. They've got a half dozen islands there in that area of the strait with runways and bunkers and weapons hidden throughout there. But I still don't understand why we can't militarily take back the strait. That's just me. My Navy days were a long time ago, but we had targets. We had targets because of the way Iran was, even back then. One of my targets, I had a target. Am I allowed to say this? I had a target folder, flying A7s and NF-18s. And one of my targets was Bandar Abbas, which is their major Navy base. And
Yep.
I knew exactly what kind of weapons I needed and what they had and what to expect and how we would take care of that. So, again, I'm kind of wandering around, but it is a problem that's been going on for years and years and years.
Yeah, I think that it's also the case that some people are saying, well, you can't go after civilian infrastructure in Iran. And I'm like, what
Mhm.
do you call the Straits of Hormuz, which is, by the way, international waterway, not the sole possession of the country of Iran.
Right.
And even those islands that they occupy are contested by, I think, the UAE or something,
Yes, the UAE, the closest to the UAE. Yeah.
which means that I don't think those islands are going to be Iran's for very long.
Right.
And I think that this is something that has been war gamed for decades as to how to maintain and control the Straits of Hormuz. It's not new. It might have been even more crucial in the past than it is now. So this is something that may take some additional time to deal with, but is also absolutely essential. You can't leave it in the hands of a regime that's done what they've been doing and is still promising to do that and refuses to negotiate any terms for yielding in this conflict, which just suggests that yeah, there's more work to do. But on the other hand, um, I do think that we're finding out who the countries are that are prepared to see this through, and I think the Arab countries are starting to feel like this is their war too now,
Mhm.
and that they have something at stake, that they can't just wait and see what happens and hope for the best. We're finding that the Europeans, frankly, are just kind of a weak regional power at this
Mhm.
point, and not even capable of dealing with the threats in their own sphere. Right?
Right.
Without us, they're not effective in dealing with Ukraine, and the only ones who are effective right now seem to be in the eastern end of NATO.
Mhm.
And so,
Oh, yeah.
well, and so that means that the world's kind of changing. It's restructuring. These conflicts are changing how this, and they're introducing new forms of warfare. I'm curious what you think about drones because they obviously went from something we used occasionally to take out terrorists and surveil things to in Ukraine, they've turned into almost a dominant weapon system for the type of warfare that is. And they've eliminated some of the things that used to be part of warfare as being effective. Tanks are just sitting ducks with drones now, aren't they?
Right. Yeah.
I understand the Ukrainians are much happier with the Bradley fighting vehicles than they are with the M1 Abrams for that reason. And
Yeah.
then, of course, there's the math. I understood one of the reasons why we felt like we had to take action on Iran is because their rate of producing missiles was much faster than our rate of producing anti-missile missiles to take them out, and therefore we couldn't wait to see where that math took us.
Yeah.
That math exists when you fly an F-18 Super Hornet out with a missile to take out a drone, and the drone costs what $100,000, and the missile costs 500,000 or something like that.
They're
Maybe
much more broader than that. I mean, I think some of those drones are like $50,000, and some of our air-to-air missiles are or surface-to-air missiles to knock them out are millions of dollars.
millions.
Like, yeah, so but like a lot of things in this country were driven by the industrial complex and what it can do in response to things. They hire the best scientists, and so you start out with drones, talking about drones, and that relatively new element, right? And
Hmm.
how we defense against it, and that's where there's so much research going into how we knock them out of the air before they ever get to us. And there's a lot of good stuff out there that's providing defense for those drone swarms that people talk about. And so we have our ways, I think. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's multiple layers, right? There's a lot of jamming going on. Those things get jammed.
yeah,
Then there's a response to that. They have the ones that are the fly by wire, but they don't have very many of them,
we have lasers.
and they have lasers. And I think actually uh, lasers are going to kind of, and a few other of those types of beam weapon systems are going to probably negate the drone thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because you can fire a lot of lasers at almost no costs and take out thousands and thousands of drones almost instantaneously. And
the challenge is the weapon itself, the laser weapon, because of the size of it and the weight of it. And, what kind of a ship do you put it on if you're using ships, or what kind of a wheeled vehicle do you have, or how do you get it to the area of battle, right?
To deploy it.
Yeah. So,
well, what do you think about we've got air power that works in a place like the Middle East, where you have combined weapon systems, right? So like we take out their SAMs, we have weapon systems that are designed to do that. Then we change the characteristics of the battle space, and then we've got bombers that can actually still, in almost any battle space, come in and hit targets and leave and not be detected, or not know that they're coming, with any warning. We've got all kinds of signals intelligence. We can see things and hear things and monitor things. I guess we were actually able to see where one of the pilots was at 7,000 feet in the mountains, hiding, and we were able to sight them, which is amazing, which could be a combination of satellites and drones and that type of thing. So we got all this stuff, but that's in a space where we can just do our will, right, and dominate.
Yeah, but
the Taiwan Straits might be a different situation.
We have capabilities to operate in some of those high threat spaces, through jamming and through the space and high altitude stuff. And the MQ-9 Reaper, that bad boy did some great stuff in this last weekend, and then throughout this war, and throughout our intelligence seeking years, before the war. It does some great stuff. One of my junior officers actually got to fly those from a control desk in Las Vegas. And so we have some great capabilities. And people keep thirsting for more information about this past weekend. Well, a lot of that we don't want to talk about. We don't want anybody else to know about.
I was surprised they shared what they did.
Yeah, but there's a lot. There are other angles on that too. Like a couple of my friends said, "Wow, we lost 2 C-130s. The battle-ready 130s, offensive and defensive, and carrying people." And I said, "Yeah, we lost, that and a couple of helicopters, and maybe you want to call the loss of the A-10, probably built in 1975." But I know we're not that old, but we've lost some airplanes. But what we didn't lose was the propaganda value that the Iranians would have gathered from that one U.S. pilot, because that is a huge bargaining chip. So it was that victory, not only psychologically for us and against the Iranians, that victory in pulling him out saved us many, 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 many millions of dollars, and our ability to negotiate or bring people to the table with power and with.
Well, those special C-130s contain a lot of exotic equipment, as I understand it, that you'd never want anyone to get a hold of or even know that you have. And they would immediately share that with the Chinese and the Russians.
Right. Sell it to them or whatever. Yeah.
So I think we know we have to do these things, but we also didn't lose people, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That's almost.
I think the reason we lost those C-130s is they landed in the middle of the night on ground that was not ever designed to be a runway.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the contingencies were there that, okay, if anybody gets stuck, we'll drop some big bombs on those vehicles and make sure they're obliterated. And you can see in the Iranian news reports the smoking wreckage of those airplanes, that there's nothing left that can be salvaged or taken for intel reasons, right? I don't think. So I think that, and again, because part of that whole combat SAR and getting that guy back, part of that built into the briefing were all these contingencies, and that's what makes us so good.
It is going to be important to stay that good, right? Because if you look at the Russians, which a lot of people thought were pretty good, they were past their prime. They didn't have a lot of these weapon systems. But for instance, the the Su-57 was supposed to be a pretty darn good fighter aircraft, and the Ukrainians actually took out one, and they've shot down a bunch of other aircraft. So really, Russian aircraft don't operate with impunity over Ukrainian skies. Now, I think the Ukrainians are much more robust at military tactics, technology. That's where the Soviet Union used to produce its missiles, was in Ukraine, and but they can't operate like we can. But then again, we always have to ask ourselves the question: how do we stay in that pole position? Because clearly the Chinese are trying to challenge that, and they would like to change that story for the Straits of Taiwan and the South China Sea, wouldn't they?
Certainly, and that's got to be at the top of our list of threats. I mean, we're handling the one we're facing now because, frankly, we're better in every area. But when we get to a situation where the Chinese start encircling Taiwan and go into an offensive, we're going to have our hands really full. I will go back to one thing you said, Kevin, about the pilots, the Russian pilot getting, the Russian airplanes getting shot down or whatever. A lot of that goes back to the fact we in the U.S. have terrific equipment, but we also have terrific operators.
Yeah, that don't do dumb stuff and don't hot dog, right?
Well, hot dog's okay.
Okay, there's a few
win.
Yeah, buzzing towers every once in a while.
We used to say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't whatever, with a little bit tongue in cheek there, but we know our limits, but we also know, but those limits allow us to go places where others can't. And they allow us to train in areas where the imagination can dwell and give you a tactical advantage. So I think good people, we start to fret about equipment and the opposition, but we need to just stay sharp with who we've got operating, the pilots and the ground troops, the mechanics, the sailors, soldiers, Marines, coasties even, and airmen, all of us, all of them. Now I can't say us anymore, but my heart is certainly there, need to stay at the top of their game. And we have seen that. We've seen that in this last 6 weeks.
Well, and speaking of staying at the top of our game, so there's a debate that's now starting about the 2027 budget. And the first thing that the Trump administration's come out with is a proposal to significantly increase the Pentagon budget, and that doesn't absolve the Pentagon of waste, fraud, and abuse, and bad procurement processes and stuff that all have to be fixed, and audits that they haven't done well at. But having said that, look at how much it's paid off to be able to do something that at one time would have been really maybe even 20 years ago, we wouldn't have considered to be able to do something like this on this scale with such impunity. To have one jet fighter shot down and another A-10 that's doing close-in air support get shot up, that's it. We've lost more to accidents and friendly fire, unfortunately, and those happen in war. They just do.
The fog of war is a great expression, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Sun Tzu brought to the world of battle and the world of combat and the world of going against an opponent, right? And we have, we're going to have ancillary things that are tragic and undesirable, but that's part of it. That's part of winning, is being not so risk averse that you never are able to look the bad guy in the eye and and take them down.
They can smell it when they think they can get away with something, and that's what they had, I believe, unfortunately, at times with the previous administration. There were people that said, "You know what? These guys, they're not gonna do anything about it." And so they went and they did stuff that I don't think some of these countries would even consider doing right now.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
if you take that psychology and look even further, more deeply at it, where the opposing countries, the threatening countries, knew that we wouldn't react. Part of the reason, perhaps, is that when we reacted, those that were sent into that area would not feel like they had the support from
Behind
behind.
them.
Yeah, and there was no doubt where we are now. No doubt. Like when the president was briefed at 2 o'clock in the morning, he said, with the options of taking this colonel back, do it, make it happen, get it
Yeah.
done, get it done. I think we're
Get it done. And the other thing too, of course, is um, being committed to success, and then also allowing the people on scene in the battlefield to make decisions that solve problems quickly. Because time and again, I saw under some of the previous administrations, they had quasi legal advisors back
Mhm.
in DC, uh, micromanaging warfighters in the front. And that's just a one great way to actually fail to accomplish what you sent them there for, and then drive those warfighters nuts.
Yeah, and that you mentioned one thing about sending the decisions out to the battlefield, and rather than making them back here and saying, "Go do this," that delegation of authority has to be uh, has to be built around the fact that those that are on the front line are qualified. They've been trained. They've got it up here. They know where we need to go, and that confidence builds a trust that is so strong, and that trust bond is what allows leaders to project and delegate out. With the because of the training you've given people. This is not just warfare, but the training you've given others to get things done, and they will know that I am allowed to make decisions that'll make us more efficient and more effective, and create better results.
Yeah, and a lot of our adversaries over the years have had militaries that didn't let the people do that in their
Yeah.
ranks, and it was a huge game-changing advantage.
Yeah.
A long time ago, I learned that we have the best, and sometimes the unique opportunity of having NCOs that actually can be the backbone of the military and make decisions and solve problems. And I've seen examples of it. Other militaries, they just have officers and they have grunts. That's it.
Yeah.
Nobody in between, and nobody that can provide that leadership on the ground.
Give me a good chief petty officer and a senior petty officer, and out, and let me interact, let me get to know them, let them know what I'm like, build that trust, and go, oh, chief, you got it, get her done, I know you can do it, and that sort of thing. And that's what we have in our military. We have that confidence, that trust, and that ability to delegate authority, which is terrific.
So here's the one of the big challenges, and when we talk about staying ahead of the game, this is a special challenge, isn't it? AI seems to be the war that has leveraged AI in a way that didn't even exist 5 years ago. They are able to identify targets using AI analytics that you just couldn't do before.
Mhm.
And they can track down and find things. They can create scenarios where and I believe actually that the Iranians and maybe others that are helping them are using AI in
Mhm.
response to figure out how to deal with the challenges that we pose to them. So that means that this is not something you necessarily hand over your authority to, like Terminator or something, but more. how can you actually have to have it, don't you, to compete?
Yeah, we have to master it. We have to be better than anybody in the world, and that's why there's an ongoing discussion, argument, whatever, about the U.S. versus China in the AI world. We need to let it blossom here in the U.S. and in a very good, positive way. There's so much, but also having people trained on how to best use that and not use it as a crutch, but use it to develop wonderful ways of doing business and wonderful things that we can create. But we have to sometimes ask for it. We have to know what to ask for. And those systems have to be programmed like anything else. So it's scary. It's scary for somebody my age to think about all this. Shoot, I don't know how to get a picture out of my iPhone, or whatever. So I need to call my 12-year-old grandson. Hey, help me out with this thing, But AI is just a whole step beyond. The AI is kind of like maybe the introduction of the internet altogether, and or cell phones. Cell phones more mechanically, I guess. But boy, oh boy, AI is a whole world that's it's there, and we better get used to mastering it.
Well, some of the fighter configurations, I think, that they're developing, and who knows what will end up coming from all this. But
Yeah,
I believe the next gen fighters are supposed to be these Generation 6. I forget the acronyms they use for that and the names, but it's a fighter that then has like several, like 3 or 4 or 5 drones that travel with it.
Yeah.
And are governed and controlled by that fighter. And those fighters now, the new ones, will have, some almost already do have, the capabilities that we once thought only an AWACS could have to see what's going on in the battle space.
Yeah.
Then you add AI to that and the ability to make decisions quickly and analyze combat information. And I'm like, this is going to look really different.
Mm-hmm. It is. As you're talking about that one plane that's going to have the drones around it, that one plane might be a drone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the information web, I mean, they're getting stuff from satellites and stuff on the ground, stuff from everywhere. How do you develop a screen for that, to meld it all together? And that's where the power of artificial intelligence is pretty darn impressive, with what it can put together for you. So,
well, maybe a good thing to kind of head into the last few minutes here of chatting is, you've talked a lot about leadership, and you need it at every level of society. We've talked about how sometimes, I don't know if AI is going to replace some of the bad leaders that we have running things in places like Oregon, but for now, it's really, we need real leaders who know how to craft and mentor people and make decisions, but then also empower people working under them to make decisions. And AI just really allows people to do some things that we once would have considered superhuman, but you still need leaders.
Yeah. You need leaders. You need people to make contact and then create expectations. I don't know that you can create and assure those expectations will be met with a machine. I think you build this trust bond, human to human, that is so rich in its strength that we humans have emotions, that we have hearts that are just as strong as we can make them, and responsive as we can make them, with that level of trust and sense that, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for my sales director. I'm going to do this for my major in a Marine unit, right? Vice just getting it, a thing that you read, an edict, maybe an AI generated course of action. Well, yeah, okay, that looks good, and maybe, maybe we can do that. But is your heart in it? Is your sense of obligation? Do you truly know what the expectations are? And, the voice that aired that to you, was it full of enthusiasm, or was it, oh man, you got to go get this done? So there are big takeaways in human relations in leadership. And so AI is going to be great, but we still have to have people that support it, with their thoughts, their mind, their emotions involved to get the best results.
And who wouldn't, in any command position, not have wished for a super advisor to come and help them refine their own thoughts? But in the end, it's about making decisions
Yeah,
and then ably leading and inspiring people to follow. That just that is an eternal condition.
yeah. A lot of that is along the way as you develop military, civilian, commercial entity, whatever, is what you learn along the way and what you experience from other leaders, and the strong points that you can apply to your own style. Right? There are things that I remember seeing people that led me, and I thought, oh, I wish I could tell a joke like that guy tells a joke.
Yeah, that's right.
It just lightens me up. And I go, but I can't tell a joke. So I've got to get another arrow for my quiver from a leadership quiver, and that's not just military, that's leadership all the way around. So you find those things along the way. So sometimes it's not just like, you're a 23-year-old and you get thrown into being a CEO. Obviously that's not going to happen. So you pick stuff along, you grow with it. And I don't know that we can grow with that from electronic information, from artificial intelligence. A lot of that has to be what impacts you, what impacts your heart and your soul as you're moving along. What becomes your values? What become the values that you have that encourage people to follow you and to want to follow you and want to succeed? And as you see that success coming from them, now you know that you are being successful because you're bringing that person to a new level of performance, and that's what you want to do.
Well, whenever we've had the opportunity to talk, and certainly on this show, you've brought us to a new level of everything,
No,
Greg, and we really appreciate it because there's just there's a lot to know, and just what we were talking about the news. Sometimes it's just full of garbage, and you have to sort out the garbage. It's great to have you come on and kind of help us cut through the stuff we're seeing and hearing because you know a person who's been as close to it as you have and know people who are involved have given us some great insight, and that extends not only to what you've done with our military and with the Blue Angels, but also in the political sphere because you've been a candidate and there's no experience like being a candidate to understand what being a candidate is like. It's different than just sitting there watching someone give a speech and say I could do that. It's different. But
sure, entirely.
what are your last thoughts? What are your feelings on what's going to emerge from the primary? I don't know if you have a favorite, but do you think we're gonna have a strong move here?
I do. I think, like I said earlier, there are four. The top four candidates are terrific. Any of those four would be a great governor. Um, Sometimes I, maybe to a fault, like to hitch my wagon to hitch my star. How's it go? Anyway, link up with who I think will win. So that's a challenge. Do you put your support by who you think can win, or do you put your support behind somebody who would be the best governor?
Yeah.
So please, everybody, look at that, right? When you go to vote in the primary, who would be the best governor? Because when it comes down to the one-on-one after the primaries are done before November, the one-on-one, we want somebody that can just rip apart the incumbent there. So
Yep.
I'd rather, are you asking me who I think it should be? I know somebody who has, a couple of them have run before, a couple of the candidates have run before for governor. And I know someone who stands out, so to speak, that that might get the most support. So anyway.
We'll see what happens. You gave some good advice on what people need to weigh from your perspective, having been a candidate and also one of the great patriots that wants to see the best thing happen for the state of Oregon. So again, really appreciate you being on, Greg.
Well,
And
I enjoyed it. I know there are people out there listening to me going, "Oh, you're full of crap," you don't know what you're doing. And that's fine. That's all part of the discourse, right? So
that's the great American discourse.
Yeah, that's right. And I hope I didn't offend anybody. But Kevin, thank you for having me on.
You bet. And by the way, I just have to tell you, one of the first comments that got posted here, Karen Darnell, the wife of David, he passed away a few years ago, and he was one of our co-hosts. And she said, I still have a Greg Wooldridge field sign here. So you haven't done too bad. You got folks holding on to your sign.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Mrs. Darnell. Thank you.
Oh, and where can people they can see the Blue Angels movie? You talked about that before. It's
Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime. I don't get a penny if you watch it. I need a better lawyer the next time, but I don't get a penny for it. But and it's G-rated. Oh man, it's great. The kids love it. It just brings them a whole new dimension of what the world could hold for them, right? So it's on Amazon Prime, and I like to say we, but IMAX released at the beginning of last year a 40-minute version that shows in museums. Now listen to this: they have to have an IMAX theater. It can't be
IMAX,
big screen. I wish it could be just any major screen, but it's a 40-minute, and I've traveled around the country last summer to the Smithsonian and the Kennedy Space Center down in Florida, promoted, and it's all, most of those theaters are in 3D as well as IMAX, so you get the full. I mean, you're in the cockpit.
So when you see that, check it out. It's a treat. All right.
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks again, Greg. Have a great rest of the week, and we hope to have you on again.
I'd love to. Thanks, Kevin. My pleasure.
All right. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Please share this show with everyone you can, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Captive Audience. Have a great night, all.